Techno in the universe, futurism and techno. Berlin, we know that it's very loving to techno music. And in this talk, we're going to have two amazing people joining us. One is Juan Atkins, which is a legend, is the man who has invented techno, actually, music. And we're going to have also Carl Loben, which is going to be moderating, which is a music journalist, DJ since the 90s, and editor in chief of DJ Magazine. So basically, in this talk, we are going to examine the third wave. What is this third wave that one defines is the transition from the industrial area to the technological area, which is something that we are living in our everyday music. And Juan is going to tell us about how this relates to the universe itself. So I'm going to give you the stage and enjoy the talk.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've got Juan Atkins, Detroit techno pioneer, here with us today, and we've had a few technical difficulties. Hopefully, everyone can still see and hear us. But yeah, want to take you back, Juan, to when you were a kid, first of all, and your dad was a concert promoter, and your grandma bought you a synth when you were a teenager, aged about 15, a Korg MS-10, if I believe, and you started making music, and you've previously described teaming up with a slightly older kid at high school, Rick Davis, and you made early Cybertron releases together. Can everyone still hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So yeah, when
I can hear you.
Hear you, yeah.
But can you hear?
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yep. So Juan, when you teamed up with Rick initially and started making Cybertron releases, that there was a book you came across in high school, wasn't there? By Alvin Toffler, Future Shock. How did that influence you at the time?
Yeah, I in high school, mind you, this was like 1979. I graduated high school in 1980. My senior year, I took a course called Future Studies, and the reference book for that class was Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And this book, at the time, I was starting to mess around with synthesizers. I was well into like science fiction, anything space, the future, and that's why this class, when I was looking at the brochure to pick my courses for my senior year, I'm like, future studies, wow, that looks interesting. So let me take this course, and that's where I discovered this book, Future Shock, and what it talks about is transitioning from an industrial society to a technological society, and the things that the changes that will take place, and basically a forecast into the future because of technology. And
in terms of your
I continue my studies. Sorry,
carry on, Juan. Carry on.
I continued my studies into after I graduated into community college, and there is where I met Rick Davis, who was sort of in the same lane as I was in, but he was a little bit more advanced in terms of making music with technology. You know, he had a sequencer, which, you know, I was just starting to learn about what sequences were and what they did, based on a Giorgio Moroder album, Energy Equals MC Squared. And that album, which Giorgio Moroder, I think everybody knows, was Donna Summer's producer. And I Feel Love and Sunset People, that whole album, Bad Girls, and that was a huge album for Donna Summer, right around my senior year in high school. So all of this stuff kind of like piqued my interest into music being made from technology. And so there,
Yeah,
when I went to community college, I met Rick Davis, who was like a little bit more advanced. And I brung the demos that I had been making in high school to my class. I had a music classes where I met Rick in community college. And I brought this demo, and everybody in the class, it was only like 10, 15 people in the class, but everybody fell in love with this demo. And subsequently, Rick invited me over to his place to at this time, it was like coming out of the funk era when everybody would get together and jam. There was no one person making entire songs. So he invited me to come by and jam with him. Although Rick was the first person that I met was making entire productions on his own.
And then Juan, yeah, and so you started making music together, and you called yourselves Cybertron, and your first release,
yeah,
Alleys of the Mind, that got played by a Detroit kind of experimental late night radio DJ, didn't it? Electrifying Mojo, who sort of helped blow that that track up, didn't he?
Yeah, Electrifying Mojo. This was at a time when FM just started in like 1977, and at this time there was only 3 radio stations on the FM dial, and 2 of them was rock and roll stations, and the other one was a religious station that, because of the riots, had got awarded a license. They had, by law, they had to award I guess minority license to somebody. So this happened to be the station that Mojo was on. And being said, the reason why is like he didn't have any format. This was at a time when there was only 3 FM stations on. There was no format. So this allowed Mojo to play a wide variety of music, and he became kind of iconic in the city for playing like unorthodox songs, stuff that wouldn't normally get played on the radio. And he played our Cybertron track, Alleys of Your Mind, and it blew up in Detroit. And
had you already heard?
This was like, I think the appeal to the record was that it was, yeah. This was like, I think right around the time I heard We Are the Robots, Trans Europe Express, because Mojo used to play that stuff. And then he played We Are the Robots, he played Trans Europe Express.
And then following the success of Alleys of Your Mind, you released Cosmic Cars, which was a futurist synth track, and then Clear was kind of like in the same ballpark almost as Planet Rock, I'd say, at the time. But obviously they were made independently. Neither heard the other.
Well, actually, Clear was before Planet Rock, but because we were from little Detroit, we never got any national exposure. And Actually, Planet Rock came out. I think we had Cosmic Cars out at the same time. But it was only in Detroit. It was only a Detroit record
But while Planet Rock was to help form a basis for
because of
hip hop
Mojo,
and electro,
basically. I mean, we eventually,
you went on to produce
yeah,
Techno City, which kind of was a partial blueprint for Detroit techno, I'd say. And did you get the name Techno
well, yeah,
City?
that's the thing. The thing is that we always called our music techno, and from the beginning, and that was the difference between, although Kraftwerk and like Ultravox was somewhat influential on our music, they weren't calling it techno.
No.
And
Can you remember what year you started using the word techno?
1980,
Wow, yeah.
when I first started, basically.
And you started
1980.
saying, I
Even
make
before that, even before that, when I was making those demo tracks in my bedroom, that's what I was making, was techno tracks. Because I was learning all of this stuff from Future Shock and then the Third Wave, which was the sequel book to Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And I mean, he had terms in that book like the techno rebels, meaning that that the office would be decentralized and people would work more from the home, as opposed to going into an office to work. And I mean, we see that kind of taking shape now, especially with the pandemic.
Yeah.
It definitely went into the electronic cottage,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And
So
around about 1985, I believe you kind of parted ways with Rick Davis, and then you yourself formed Model 500 and the Metroplex label, and No
yeah,
UFOs was an early
yeah.
release. Do you believe in UFOs and extraterrestrial beings now?
Definitely. I mean, we can't be the only life form in the universe, man. You know, and it would be foolish for anybody to think that. So I I I I don't know the reason why we're not e- we're not exposed, or at least the common person is not exposed to alien life, but definitely I believe it exists
Yeah, yeah.
in the cosmos somewhere. Yeah.
How important would you say the Music Institute Club in Detroit was for the development of techno during the 80s?
It was at this time, uh some guys, some friends of mine, started this club, and I think that they kind of saw where Detroit was going musically, that Detroit was kind of at the forefront of this new electronic dance music, and it just made sense to have a club to kind of like follow the path, you know, and it was had like cult status, and because this is the only place early, like because we were at the forefront of this whole movement, and that was the place that you go to hear all of this new stuff, all of the new Chicago stuff, the new stuff that was coming from Europe, uh, our new stuff, um, and it was just it was kind of surrealistic in a way, you know.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Because Detroit techno obviously contains kind of elements of sort of soul and funk as well.
yeah,
I'd say deep in the mix sometimes. Do you consider?
definitely. I think because I always considered my music kind of a sort of a a mash of Kraftwerk and P-Funk.
Yeah.
And I think that everything that came out of Detroit, you could hear that thread in it, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually if you consider your particular style of techno as part of the lineage of kind of Afrofuturism,
Yeah, for
going
sure.
back to Parliament Funkadelic and through Sun Ra and whoever else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. And then 1988, there was that compilation, Techno, the New Dance Sound of Detroit, that
Yeah.
sort of took, I suppose that took techno international in a sense. Did things change for you around about that time in terms of international notoriety?
Definitely. I mean, it was like well, actually our records were being exported to Europe, mainly the UK, before that album.
Mm,
That album kind of like was the world's way of catching up to something that was already kind of in full swing.
mm.
Um, I mean, even before that, you had the Essential Electro compilations that had like Clear on there, and this was like way before the Virgin Techno. And the interesting story about that album was, you know, our movement happened kind of parallel to Chicago House, and Chicago was like, it was sort of a friendly competition, because like all of that stuff like acid house and hip house, it was all techno, but they just couldn't call it techno because we were calling our music techno in Detroit.
I
So
suppose it was different flavors for different cities and
yeah, I mean, it was like the one thing about Chicago music, it was always kind of like predicated on early disco, and they never kind of like really moved past those disco influences.
why did you
And
want to focus more on futurist sounds
it
then?
was just a natural flow. You know, it wasn't a real conscious decision. It was just something that happened. Uh, and I would say the evolution of the music, the electronic instruments, kind of made it happen kind of by default. I mean, you know, if there wasn't an 808, a TR 808, or 909 drum machine, that whole thing probably would never have happened, you know. And
Yeah.
so, you know, if you want to blame anybody, I would say blame Roland.
But yeah, but so the late 80s, early 90s, obviously in the UK and Germany and other parts of Europe, techno got to be quite a popular sound, and some producers, maybe especially in Europe, started speeding up the sound or adding break beats, or it was getting harder and faster. And I know you're
Yeah,
all
it
for it.
started. I mean, the more people that came to the party, the more strands or strains of electronic music appeared, and some stuck and some didn't. And I think a real interesting twist that came out of that was like jungle and drum and bass. And if you listen to a lot of early hip house records and Detroit records, jungle music was a straight descendant of that stuff.
I mean, there was a continuum, wasn't there, that that
Yeah.
kind of the electronic music moved through in those few years in late 80s, early 90s. But was there a point where, because I know you're one for evolution, you're fine about things evolving, but was there a time when you thought, oh God, this has gone too far, this is too fast or nonsense.
Yeah, when they came with GABA and hardcore and GABA, I'm like, okay, this stuff is it's over the top now. And I mean I mean, and there was like also a racial element to it, I think. A real fascist element to this GABA stuff that was coming out of Amsterdam. And like I went to I don't know if you remember Mayday Festival, Mayday raves. At the time they called them raves, right?
Yeah.
And Mayday, man, I went to one of those, man, and it was like the hair on the back of my neck was standing up because it was like so intense. And I think that I was out of 10,000 people, I must have been only one or two. I must have been one of two, maybe two black people that was there. And needless to say, man, this is like in the middle of Germany. It's kind of scary, man.
But I mean, that was quite a niche twist to the sound. I suppose in Rotterdam and the odd other place in Holland and the odd place in Germany, there was
Yeah.
kind of like GABA hotbeds, but mostly it was kind of the rave and the techno and the hardcore and what have you. But as things have developed over the
Yeah.
years, is there a part of you that thinks that techno has lost its futurism now?
I wouldn't say that it's lost its futurism. I would say that it's less of a novelty now than it was at the beginning because it was new. It's not new anymore. But I still think it has the same power and the same impact. Uh, uh, and by the simple fact that there's still more technology still is evolving, which lends to better and quicker creativity, you know, and and I think that as long as technology is evolving, the music will evolve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And you've in recent times revived your Cybertron project, haven't you? Why did you want to redo that?
Um, people. I mean, ever since I started, I mean, ever since we broke up Cybertron, I've always been asked to do Cybertron. Like, can you redo Cybertron? I don't know. It's something about the music and the name that just gave it a whole life of its own, and kind of like a cult status in a way. And I just so many situations that kept being kept coming at me to where just one situation came where you gotta remember that a lot of guys that are like in the music in the jazz music, electronic music were like babies when I started, and now they're like prominent players in the game. And so I started getting asked by like different creative entities, like, hey, like this uh iteration of Cybertron as it is now, I got approached by a laser a lighting company that had this new technology in lights and laser to do this Cybertron logo, but they only wanted to do it at Cybertron. These guys grew up on Cybertron. So eventually, I had to kind of cave in and say, okay, uh, in order to push, if you guys only want to do this at Cybertron, then who am I to stop your creativity, And so we did it.
Yeah, cool. And have you got any shows
So
lined
now,
up? Have you got any Cybertron shows lined?
Well, the pandemic came and kind of like
Yeah.
stop the progress of that. I mean, we were just building up steam with Cybertron Live, and pandemic came and it stopped, put a pause on everything. I mean, even the production of new music. You know, I couldn't, you know, because a lot of the stuff that I was starting to record, I was recording in Berlin, and so I couldn't go into, you know, anywhere. Basically, I had to stay stuck in my home. So I kind of revamped my studio. One thing I was able to do was I was able to finish an album
Okay.
while I was stuck in the house, and I guess, you know, I took lemons and made lemonade
Mhm.
out of it. I mean, it remains to be seen because the album ain't out yet, but I think it's going to be good. And the promoter, our agent, was like, you know, we've been talking about doing this album for the last 2 years, and they were kind of like waiting for the album to come out before they started like really aggressively going after shows. You know, they wanted to do the shows based on the album. So now that's probably going to be released maybe spring.
Okay, yeah.
We'll get a last album comes out.
And so, yeah. So Juan,
We got I don't know if
a mere 40 years on
I mean,
since
then we
the
got one show that we talk about right now.
okay, a mere 40 years since the genesis of techno in your home city of Detroit. Techno is now the worldwide best-selling electronic music genre on Beatport. Do you feel like some sort of godfather to all of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
the
mean,
electronic scene, we've got to wrap up now, unfortunately. The electronic scene owes
really?
you a
Okay.
hell of a debt, Juan, and thanks very much for coming and talking to the conference today. And all the
Okay, my
best with,
pleasure. My pleasure, man.
and all the best with everything, with the album and the shows next year and all the rest of it.
All
Cheers
right.
then, Juan.
Thank you.